Touching back to your story that drew me to invite you on the podcast. So you're involved in something significant, a significant part of African history, world history,
Right.
in general. Do you mind taking us back? Sort of like, was it like 24 years ago? It was 94, right?
Yeah, 26 years ago now. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, it's a while back. Well, it seems like far back, but really and truly, it was just 24 years ago, which is not really that far back when you really think about it in the scope of history. So do you mind telling us what was significant about that time and how it impacted you as an individual and what you was involved in?
Right. I just want to, first of all, I want to thank you so much for having me. It really means a lot to be part of your amazing podcast. So, 26 years ago, of course, as you mentioned, there was a genocide in my country. So I was 14 years old in 1994. I was a teenager. So, of course, I understand everything happened. I've lived through the genocide as a young teen. So, but before the genocide, I grew up very normal, like any other African child in small village. Happy child. I was very fortunate to have good parents who were teachers. So I don't know if you want me to tell you a little bit about the country first before
Yes, please. Yeah. I mean, I would love the overall story. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So Rwanda, for those who know, Rwanda is in Central Africa. So very small country. We've had, it's a country where we've lived centuries, where we've had monarchy. And then now after monarchy, the Belgians were colonized by Belgians, so they changed the whole system we've had. So which was a system where we have Hutus and Tutsis and Twa were social classes, and they had to change it into ethnicity. So, and everything changed in the country where people used to come from one social class to another because of the wealth. If you had more cows, you moved from Hutus to Tutsis. So everybody knew that, and it was really okay. Every time I speak to the people who were, those older who were living a lot at that time, but many of them are not alive anymore. So, but it was really normal. It was okay, and people were so happy until the Belgians. Of course, it was Germans first, and then the Belgians came in the country, so they had to change the whole system. So they colonized us, and they brought the ethnicity. So dividing these people who were living together happily and make them enemy. So, and they made majority Hutus against the Tutsis. So, and at that time, what they did, they had to bring ID cards. They had to create ID cards. So the ID cards, so you had to, if you are Hutu, because of how they measure your height, your nose. I'm sure many of the people have seen it online, how they used to measure your noses, your skin, your skin texture. So they made sure that people believed what they were doing. So they had to create this ID card. Whoever was living at that time, if they place you as a Hutu, so you have to have that ID as a Hutu and then a Tutsi. So that's how many of the people of my family, we became Tutsis because of many of my ancestors coming from my family. So we became Tutsis. That's how we became Tutsis. So we became part of the minority. So, and since then, when they left the country was completely different now. So the Hutus started actually in because after they eliminated the last king we had in the country. So in 1959, who was murdered actually, they decided when they left, that's when we had a new, the first republic in the country. So they were Hutus at that time. So they started killing Tutsis at that time in 1959. So that's why we had so many Tutsis who left the country. They were in many countries around the world, mainly our neighboring countries like Congo, which is now DRC. Zaire used to be called Zaire before, but now it's DRC. Burundi, Tanzania, many of them were living around those countries. So, and those of us, my family members, and some of them were in exile. So not many, but there were some of them were in exile. So, and those who remained in the country, they were persecuted many decades. So that means they lived in a persecution, being refused to go to certain schools, and many times we were dehumanized and being called cockroaches and snakes. So for me, the way the Tutsis lived at that time in the country, they got used to being persecuted, and they managed to somehow accept, what was happening. Every time you talk to someone who was alive at that time, they tell you that it was hard for them to live, but at the same time, they wanted to live a normal life, even though it was not easy. So I was born in the time then when the Tutsis were persecuted, and my parents were persecuted throughout their lives, my grandparents. So, but they never spoke much about what happened to them before. So, and when I was growing up, what happened, I realized in school when I was younger, we were asked in the classrooms when we were kids to stand up as Tutsis and Hutus. As a kid, you never knew
what's going on.
Yeah, what's going on. So you are taught to love people, but you didn't know, what's happening. And these were our neighbors. We were all Black. We were not necessarily looking different.
A quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Quick question. So prior to the Belgians coming over, there was no division in terms of the tribes. So there wasn't Tutsi and Hutsi. Was that only identified as differentials once the Belgians came into it?
Yeah. Before the Belgians came, it was more about social classes. It's almost like if you were, people knew how to move from one class to another.
Yeah.
If you earn more cows, that means you're wealthy.
Yeah, so which is a universal thing anyway.
It's a universal thing. It's like a wealthy, poor, and all that. So somehow people used to help each other to move from one class to another. It's almost like they never really had to have any problem with that. It was very normal. So a lot of people knew how to really move from one class to another. So, and they were happy the way they lived. So, and until that was changed, they realized this country, people know how to live in peace, and they decided to divide them. So they had to change everything. So, and it worked. It worked because the division started when they left. So that's when you realize that the minority Tutsis were persecuted throughout the years, so throughout decades. So in the ideology of hatred grew because they were learning from countries where, where they had a Holocaust, how you have, a lot of things are really kind of similar in the way of see the persecution.
It's the divide and conquer tactic, which works along any sort of traditional boundaries. Because one of the interesting things that I read in relations to the genocide in Rwanda was that they were pushing the propaganda that the Tutsis were European and Egyptian descendants, whilst the Hutu were sort of like the indigenous people. So they were separating them on those grounds, which was like propaganda, which then sort of like flames up this idea that we're different.
And it was really so deep to a point where they had to use also a radio. They had to create a radio, RTM radio at that time, which was a radio that was used to just incite that hatred, to make people believe that Tutsis are different from other, regular people in the country. So Hutus. So, and some people believed it. It's so sad. They believed it, but we look alike. My friend who was so considered to be a Hutu, she looks like me. There's not different from me and her. So we are all the same. We look alike. So, and people believed it to a point where throughout the country. So as I was mentioning earlier, in the classrooms, we were asked to stand up so they can count how many Tutsis and Hutus in the classroom. So as a kid, somehow, because you never know, you didn't know what was happening. So somehow your teacher will, if you go, for instance, on the Hutu side, because you didn't know, she would just pull you and, like in the harsh. So yeah, and you didn't know as a kid. But then when I was in junior high school, that's when I started realizing how, because you're starting to realize how you're not liked as Tutsis in the country. So I was bullied by a classmate who actually who was a niece of the mayor. So she used to come in the class, and because of what she was hearing at home, I guess she decided to bully me and my fellow Tutsis in the classroom. So, and the way my parents did, they had to tell you, okay, be nice, just go to school. If anything happens, but they would never just go, to school to confront, because they knew that it was going to be bad. Yeah. So the only way is just to tell you, okay, just move from a seat where you were. They would tell my teacher to move me from where I was sitting, so at least I can be far. I learned just to be far away from her. So yeah, and that's how I avoided, to be, harassed by her. So. And for me, I wouldn't say my situation was worse at that time in junior high compared to my friends who were living in the boarding school. It was not a boarding school. At least I used to go home, after school. So, and those who were in the boarding school, it was worse. They would just tear their clothes. They would throw like bad things in their clothes. They sometimes throw water on them while they are sleeping. It was really, when you hear those stories also, it's really horrible. I have friends who've been through that. So those experiences. So my parents didn't want to send me in a boarding school because they knew what would happen to me. So, and that was really minor compared to a lot of people until I experienced the worst, in the genocide. In the genocide,
what stage did that happen? So between the time you're talking now, you're talking about now where you were in education, what was the time span from that until it becoming a sort of like a bloody civil war genocide? Sorry.
You mean by the time?
Yeah, what was the time scale? So you're talking about being in school and then it's starting off the hatred and the discrimination towards you because you're a Tutsi. When did it turn into genocide?
It turned into a genocide in 1994. Of course, I was in junior high school. I was by the time close to when I was 14 years old. So I was 13 years old actually when I experienced the discrimination from my classmate. It was probably 1993. So, and in 1994, that's when, because we were on vacation for Easter vacation at home. So, and at that time, throughout the country, there were chaotic, things going on. Tutsis were being murdered in many parts of the country because they created actually multiple parties, where some of them were mostly about, majority Hutus who were trying to go throughout the country to mostly young people. A lot of them were young people trained to go throughout the country to go, destroy homes and sometimes, create a chaotic, incidents, and sometimes, telling mostly the Tutsis who were known at first, so who were on the list of being persecuted. Some of them were thrown in jail. Some of them were in jail for so long. So, and after the plane was shut down, for those who knew, sometimes people think because of the plane was shut down, that's the reason why the genocide happened. Yeah, no, I think a genocide is a well-planned thing. It's really not something that happens overnight. So, and some countries knew it was going to happen because there were machetes imported in the country. And there were many things really to kill more than a million. A million people don't die just because, one plane or person dies just like that. No, it doesn't, and it's not like that. So what happened, I don't know if you've heard, there is a man, Kabuga Felicien.
Was he the radio personality?
Yeah. So he was one of the main people who who actually, it was a businessman who gave the money, who financed, the genocide, who gave the money to, to buy the machetes. There were machetes imported, and he had a lot of machetes in his stocks. So he's one of the people behind creating the RTM radio, which was also one of the radio that was used to tell the Hutus throughout the country to kill Tutsis. So, and there were personalities, many of them who were like, they are just acting, in a very, it's very unfortunate the way they were acting, the way they were saying things like those Tutsis, cockroaches, and,
It's dehumanizing them, making it easier to kill.
Yes, dehumanization. Because I was a teen, everybody listened to a radio. Radio is something that everybody listened to. So we had a regular radio, which was a national radio, and then that radio also too. So, and a lot of people used to listen because they want to hear what was happening. As a kid, as a teenager, so it was horrifying to hear that. But at the same time, I never imagined there would be a genocide. I never really thought there was going to be where they are going to kill people. We thought maybe it would be chaos about things.
So was that the general consensus amongst the Tutsi, that it wasn't really going to escalate to that level and no one was going to take it serious in terms of what was being...
They got used to that. Yeah. They got used to living a life like that. We got used to living a life like that. So nobody thought it was going to be where there would be a genocide really throughout the country. So as soon as April 6th, for many people know, April 7th, that's when throughout the country, they started killing everybody. Everything stopped and nothing was working. So, and they had to really, really encourage people to go and kill. Imagine seeing your neighbors, who are your neighbors, suddenly some of them wake up with machetes and go after searching people to kill. So it was horrifying to see. So at first, because where we lived in the western part of the country, because we're not living in a capital city, we're living outside of the city. So we were living in a small village. Most of the time in the village, people are mostly like kind to each other. So you would think things will be bad in the city, but you would think people might not do horrible things to you in the small places, like small villages. But because of how this ideology of hatred has been taught many decades, so they believed, what they were telling them. So we had to flee. We had really to run for 3 months, really hiding in the most difficult way.
You left your house because your neighbors were coming to attack your family.
Yeah, so they had to, actually what happened at first, we thought maybe if you go to neighbors, they will hit us, maybe things will get better for sure, maybe sooner, then we can go back to our home. But by the time we left our home, and our homes were completely destroyed. Even people we knew, our family members' homes, the people, our neighbors, even who were like Tutsis. So they destroyed homes immediately. Our homes were burned down. So, and what we had to do is just to go and find who is kind enough to hide us in their homes. So, and it was very difficult to see my parents. I thought that they were very protective of me and my siblings because we were 5 kids. I was the oldest in my family. Now my father was afraid. My father was a teacher, my mom was a teacher. They have helped so many people. Now it's hard for them to really know what to do. So, and there were people who were kind to hit us, but there were people who were unkind who have done the most horrible things to us. So, and for me to survive, it was a miracle. I would say there's nothing I've done, but it was a miracle for me to survive. Story, so we hid in the bushes and many times hungry, our feet swollen. And because my dad was murdered at first in April 15th. So, and then after that, my mom had to carry me and my siblings to, ask, people to help us. But many times people refused, and we were hungry. My youngest brother was 16 months old and I was 14. My sister was 11 and my brothers were 9 and another one was 7. So all of us, my mom had to really help, take us wherever she can find, somebody to help. But it didn't, people were really, it was very sad to see how people changed. It was really sad to see how people changed. But at the same time, in the midst of horrible things like that, you find people who are nice too. So who are really kind. So we found people who were kind. So that's why I'm alive, because there's somebody who accepted it to hire me. So, and unfortunately, during those horrible times, people were being killed everywhere. My three brothers also were killed in May. So who were 9, 7, and 16 months old. So
and they were murdered by the genocidal vigilante.
By Interahamwe. They used to call them, they call themselves Interahamwe. Yeah, the killers, the murderers. So, and the person who killed one of the people who killed my brothers was somebody who grew up with my mom. It's very unfortunate. These are not.
So this is someone that was known to the family.
Known to the family, and my grandfather, who was my mom's mom, and his father were very close friends. That's what my mom told me. Yeah. They were very close friends for so long, to a point where in the culture of African culture, people have to give each other gifts because of friendships. So my grandfather actually gifted them a land where they lived for so long.
Wow.
So that's where they were neighbors. That means they were neighbors when I used to go to my grandfather. I thought these are part of our family. So
it's incredible how an ideology can completely make you forget about the good that someone's done to you, and the negative narrative that's being spread can turn you from being neighbors or family members to killers.
Yeah. But his family was very sad, actually, that he decided to do that, to really turn himself in, and they really felt horrible for him to do that. So, and he took my brothers, and unfortunately, he's one of them who murdered them, and the rest of us, myself and my mom, my sister, we had to hide again. We didn't want to hide anymore, because my mom was really torn apart. As you can imagine, a parent to have a child snatched from her back, her head, all the time she was carrying my younger brother on her back. So now being snatched from her, it was horrifying for my mom, all of us. But I think maybe God wanted us to survive somehow. So, and as you heard, probably many places are where they have genocide and conflicts, women and girls are most targeted in a most horrific way, and sexual violence and rape and torture.
It's used as a weapon.
Use of a weapon. So it happened to a lot of women and girls in Rwanda. So majority of them actually live with the consequences because of that. So many of them live with HIV. Others live with conditions where they don't get up out in their beds anymore because trauma. And some of them were thrown in the mass graves after that, and their bodies are really not functioning anymore. So, but recently, actually, I found out that there are young men who were raped too.
Wow.
And they never spoke about that much. I have two friends who actually it happened. They live abroad now. So, and one of them is trying to write a book about it. They actually spoke about it. Hopefully I'll connect you when his book comes out.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I would definitely would like to speak to him about it.
Yeah. So he lives in Europe. So it affects them really deeply. We talk about it, and it's really painful. And I think I'm really so I admire their courage to really open up, and they did it since one of them started last year, April 2019. That's when he wrote actually on Facebook his story for the first time.
Wow.
Really long. So
he's been carrying that burden all these years and been dealing with the trauma himself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he helped his another friend of ours also to talk about it, because it's we need to speak about it. So and now we are very close. We are very close. They are very close to me. So Yeah, no, and for me, unfortunately, I became one of the first people to also talk about that happened to me. So, as a 14 years old, and a neighbor, somebody I knew, finding me where I was hiding, and unfortunately being, beaten by him and raped by him, not too far from our home, our already destroyed home. And this is not a stranger. Again, this is somebody who lived across our home. And for me, I feel like I'm very fortunate because I have people, even those friends of mine, were tortured by multiple people, and for me, it was not a lot of people, and that's why I say I'm very fortunate because this man was hoping that many other people will find me where he left me, so that I can be tortured by several people. So, and for me, it was hard and horrible for me. I didn't want to leave anymore. So I was, I just thought maybe it's better for me to die. But somehow God wanted me to survive. So, and myself, my mom, even my mom saw what happened to me. She didn't see it happening right at that time, but she saw me going to her where we were hiding at that time. So, and imagine her having the image of how
Your
I
own
look.
child as well, yeah.
Yeah, so it was it's horrible for her. I don't know how she carries that pain even now. So even though she tries to be strong. So, and in the Muslim community, like I mentioned, there were kind people. There were someone who was there. My mom used to buy clothes from him when he used to go, buy clothes. He was a business person. So he hid us in our home because everybody has heard like what happened to me, to us, all of us. So, and he was so pained by everything we've been through.
And he
So
was a Hutsi, but
he was a Hutu, yes.
Hutu, yeah, sorry.
He was very, very kind. And he was hiding other people too and trying to,
Wow.
and with other few Muslim community
Is that someone that you're still in contact with?
he died, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry.
I feel bad he died. Yeah, I felt I
Was that as a
wanted.
cause of them finding out that he was hiding Tutsis in his house, or was it something else that?
No, he died after. Yeah, he died after the genocide. So yeah, it was just a different thing that really happened to him. So, but I felt so bad that I didn't have because he left the country after the genocide. So he died outside of the country. So, and it makes me sad that I was not able to see him again. So be able to thank him and my mom. And because he was really kind and took us in his home, and the sister was living there too. So they made sure that nobody was going to get closer to us anymore. And people have tried many times, really trying to come and they say, no, these people have been through a lot. I would never allow anybody to come and do harmful things to them. So that's how we're able to survive, me, my mom, and my sister. But he found us later. It was late. So he felt bad he found us late. So because we were hiding in many other different places and we've been through so much. So, and it was my mom, my sister were able to survive. But I'm trying to not say much about the story because you might link to the book also.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely will do. But I think that the story in itself is intriguing enough to make people want to read the rest of your story, which is
Right.
absolutely incredible. But if you just want to cover a bit about how you managed to get out eventually and leave the country.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. It's when you're on the phone, people call you, don't they?
I'm sorry somebody called me. Thank
Oh,
God.
no worries.
Recording it just so you
Yeah,
managed.
no, it's still recorded. That's absolutely fine. No, I was saying that how did you manage to get out eventually?
And the reason why also the genocide ended is because there were, Tutsis were in exile, RPF, so led by His Excellency Paul Kagame. So they were able to fight and stop the genocide, which was very hard and tough for them. So of course they found that throughout the country, million people died. There were bodies everywhere. So, and where we were at that time, they came after. So it was hard for them to capture the whole country. That's why there were so many people died. So, and these are the people who lived abroad in exile for so long, who wanted it to be part of the country, come back, especially him also. A lot of people know his story, that he went in exile when he was young. His parents left the country when he was young, his mom. And that's how the genocide was ended. So, and we were able to survive, my mom and my sister, in July. That's when the genocide ended. So, and July 4th. So that's when we have Liberation Day of when the genocide ended. So, and we found out that many of our family members were murdered on both sides. So I barely have people survive on my dad's side. On my dad's side, we are very tiny, very few people. And on my mom's side, thankfully, there were few people. At least we have, a few number of people who survived. But now my cousins who survived and a few others are trying to have kids, and some of them, are teenagers now. So I'm the only person who don't have kids yet.
yeah, seeing how.
But it's for me, because of so many reasons, because I suffered a lot because of sexual violence, and I found out that in rape, I found out that I was HIV positive, which is something that I carried with that pain and within myself, like many other fellow survivors. But one thing has helped me a lot is to talk about it, even write about it. So that's why I'm here to even talk to you. So
that's amazing.
Yeah,
your story is absolutely incredible. Yeah. What's the name of the book?
It's called Tested to the Limit. A genocide survivor's story of pain, resilience, and hope. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to get the link for that book, and then I'm going to put it down below and promote it to my listeners who definitely be interested in listening to the rest of your story. So not to cover too much of the book, because I want people to go and read it and get your full story. But I want you to just talk about something incredible, which I think happened to Rwanda after the genocide. So when I was doing my research into the Rwanda and post-genocide, I realized that there was a big disparity between men and women. So the population became mainly women because majority of the men had died through the genocide. And now there's a big movement in regards to like women taking up like positions of power and taking up historically what would have been classified as roles that men would deal with. So can you talk about that? Because I know you deal with that quite a lot, and you've delivered a few speeches within the UN, and you're an advocate for women's rights as well. So can you just enlighten my audience regarding that as well, please?
Yeah, thank you for really, saying that we are a miracle country. And
yeah, definitely.
And coming from one of the worst genocide in history that completely destroyed the country. So the country was completely destroyed. So, and as you can imagine, it's not easy to reconstruct the country, to make sure people come together. And, but I'm so grateful that we've had a government where they decided to make sure that it's necessary to involve everybody. And just, these ways of like saying this is what women do, this is what men do. So things have to change. So they have to make sure there are some laws changed and have to include women, making sure women are empowered. So especially that there were a lot of men died during the genocide. So like many widows in the country, like my mother and many others. So they had to include women, making sure women are part of the constructing the country. So, and there's so many rules, a lot of rules have changed. So from grassroots level, it's not about on the top, it started from the grassroots level. So, and now the country, so we found that you find that we have mayors, women who are mayors, women who are...
Is it majority in your government women as well? Is it? It's like 60 to 40, isn't it?
64% in the parliament, 64. Yes.
That's amazing.
And even governors, ambassadors, like in the US, we have 2 ambassadors who are women. Like UN, and also on the representing Rwanda in the US. So, and it's not about that only, even in the homes and the way women, we used to have women were not allowed to be inherited land.
Yeah.
So now those laws have changed. Women can, as you are equal to a man, a girl and a woman and a boy are equal. So they are empowered, both of them, to go to school, do the same way. And also to make sure, even when it comes to the violence against women, they have created ways like GBV, gender-based violence, where they make sure that women are, they are speaking out about what they go through in their homes. Of course, when things change, a lot of times it doesn't come, and when they are used to some, normal way of, they see a woman stay at home, you get married and all that, and that's the only thing. But now to see women in the workplace also being part of the, making sure the country is developing. So it's incredible, because throughout the country, we have women who are in the police, who are in the military. So we have a lot of them in a peacekeeping mission. You see a lot of them there too. So, and because it's encouraged, and also we are encouraged to tell our stories too. So to speak out and tell our stories, even though there are some things in the culture where sometimes people, it takes a while for some people.
Especially within African culture as well. There's a way that we communicate, and there's a way that we tell stories and express ourselves. So things do take time.
Especially as women, they say, "Oh, you shouldn't be saying that." But thankfully, because I can see really, over almost like now where we are as a country, there's so many things. Now it's normal for a person to see that a woman can be a governor, a woman can be a mayor, a woman can be anything. You can be a big businessman, and it's normal for now to see women who makes more money than a man in the household.
In the house, So the men are chilling now.
They are getting used to that now. So and at the same time, we have a culture where we respect each other. So of course, you learn how to respect each other as a family, even though you might have more, higher education. Women go to school; they're encouraged. The first lady of the country has a foundation, Umbuto Foundation, which encourages young women to go to school, to educate themselves. Educating family is also about how the importance of education for a young girl to help a community. So, and I think when a government is working to empower and educate, that's how things change. So if we didn't have a government really encouraging that, so I don't think we would have been where we are now. So
that's amazing.
And it's even though we are still in the process of healing, and especially for survivors who go through who have been through a lot of trauma and who are still suffering with the trauma, but at the same time, I'm really grateful where we are as a country. Every time even you can talk to my mom, she feels so amazed that she's now living in a country where at least she feels, that she has the right to be who she is. First time in her life. Wow. Many decades she lives her life where she felt like she was not, allowed to live in the country.
But now she didn't have a voice as well.
Didn't have a voice, but now she can be a woman who's raised her daughters without necessarily thinking, I need to have a man doing that for me. So, but she felt she was like, her voice was, is heard. And I'm really grateful that she had to leave. She's here to experience that, at least in her lifetime. So, and that's why we are really grateful that, we had a government really that decided to make sure that everybody, is included. Everyone
is amazing, because whenever you read like economic like books on economics and finance, they always highlight and praise Rwanda for being like the Singapore of Africa, sort of like the economic revolution of Africa. Because if you look at all of your various pointers, it's changing dramatically. So like the age people are living to is one of the highest in relations to other African countries as well. And what is the main attribute to that, do you think, in terms of like the new horizon and the new uprising of Rwanda as a economic powerhouse?
I think for me, the reason why the way things are changing so good in a positive way, the government, actually even the president, because he's one of them, he's the one who is behind everything. So they encourage young people. You find a lot of young people in the workplaces, even from the top level to the lower level. So the young people are encouraged to normally people, in many countries, especially in our continent, someone is respected, as a minister when you are maybe 50, right?
Yeah, it's always an age thing. Yeah.
Age thing. But now in our government, we have young people in 30s.
Wow.
Even age 40. So, and it's a young, there so like energy, the energy of young people. That's what they needed, because we've lived in a time where, especially the older people, most of them have this ideology where they've lived in a time where, it's harder to change them, some of them. So, and deciding to have young people being part of reconstructing a new country, I think it was really an amazing, thing to do. So that's why the country is. That's why you find Rwandans are more kind of welcoming in an easy way that we've never had before in the country. So that's why the most visited, you find a lot of things are going fast because young people.
And there's a big emphasis on business as well, which I've realized. There's a big push for business, which I think is essential, because what business does in entrepreneurship is it encourages people to be more productive. It encourages them to think, it encourages them to come up with ideas, to be innovative. And that's why you'll see more young people now, because they're being forced to think and to bring fresh and new ideas, which is a fantastic blueprint for, I think, the rest of Africa, if we want to get up the capitalist ladder as such, or move the country from low economic status to a higher economic status. So it's really great to see on that front when it comes to like the new Rwandan leadership and what they're doing for the country economically.
Yeah, and also encouraging other young African countries, other young Africans, also because they come in the country. So it's really incredible, because every time they have African, what do you call it? African summit, these World Economic Forums, or all these, the summit we always have in the country. So they bring everybody from all over the world, mostly young people. So I am so amazed every time, because we learn also from them. We are a small country, and I think in order to change what happened, I think we needed to have other people from, from other countries. So and I'm really, it's a very exciting time in our country. We are living in exciting time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm excited because I'm doing a few things in Ghana myself, where I'm from, and I was born there, and I'm always so excited when I'm going to Ghana, because when I was younger, I was telling this story before to my friends. When I was younger and I used to have to go to Ghana, I felt like I was forced to, like I didn't want to be there. And I didn't know why I was going back there on holiday, because I found it boring. I didn't understand what was going on. I was always stuck in the house. I wasn't even allowed out when I go there. But now when I go there, I come there with a new sense of enthusiasm, because I can see a lot of the young people there doing stuff. They're very motivated. They're very driven, and they're being given that opportunity. Well, not necessarily all of the countries, but the ones that are really engaging in this new economy that we're in, they're really engaging the young people, and they're creating new ventures. They're building new businesses. They're being innovative. So there's a sense of excitement in Africa, and I think we just need to continuously keep that momentum going and encourage people to look back home. Yeah, definitely, most definitely. So in relations to, so going back to the original story that you're telling, in relations to genocide and the spewing of hatred and bad narratives and ideologies that embed people and infuses them to become evil. How do you think we go about stopping that in the future? Like, how do we avoid such atrocities?
Yeah, from what one thing we are encouraged, and which I think it's really important for many other countries also to do, we educate about what happened. Young people are educated about what happened in the country. So, and we're talking about the way the country is moving on and thriving in so many areas, but education about what happened in the past is important in the country.
Yeah.
So, and especially for young people to never go back to where we came from, because you might do great things, but then if you're not learning from the past, you can go back again. So, and we have education about the genocide. So there are memorials every time young people learn what happened, throughout the country is part of the education. And I think in order to prevent things like that to happen, a genocide, mass atrocity, you have to be educated from the past. So, and that's why I also encourage survivors and many others to tell their stories, so that people can learn from what happened. I think when you, like Elie Wiesel always, I think a Holocaust survivor said, when you hear from a witness, you become a witness. So I think hearing from a survivor, somebody else is going to tell my story. I'm not going to be the only person to always tell my story. If I'm no longer here, one of the people will be able to tell the story. So, and I think it's important to learn from the history so that it cannot be repeated itself again. So.
Oh, that's amazing. And that's one of the reasons why I engage in these type of conversations, because I'm on a learning journey myself, and I'm speaking to people and I'm learning along the way, and I'm sharing what I'm learning with my audience, because I definitely feel like as you're learning from others, whether it be history, business and everything else, you're able to then pick out what's right and what's wrong. You're learning from their experiences. It's enabling you to see things from a better light, because you're learning from people with direct experience, as I'm learning about your history now, because this is the first time I've ever spoken to someone who is actively there. And to hear the story come from you, it's like it puts me in a numb place. So when you're telling some of the story, usually I talk a lot, but this time I just had to listen and soak it up, and it hits different. And I feel like that's what we have to, that's the way we have to look at history. We have to really study it. We have to really listen to those who are involved and understand how things came about and how we can avoid it going ahead in the future, and how we can go ahead developing a better world for ourselves and our families.
And I think one thing I think about, we are living in the world where technology is easy now. You can reach each other very easily. I think as young people, Africans, especially Africans, in order to, to help each other grow and be better, I think we need to, to know our history, to know our stories, and learn from our history, and unite and be together and help. I think that's where our continent is going to be better. So without necessarily looking at other people to come and help us, and just, learn from our history and support each other in the way we can. So I think it's important.
Amazing. And that, I mean, those no words have ever been as true as what you said to what's happening in current day. So it's about us learning about our story and figuring out what we can best do to better and empower ourselves. Final question before I let you go, because I don't know what time it is over there. I think it's morning over there, isn't it?
It's going to be 4 p.m.
Oh, lucky for you. It's 9 p.m. here.
It's 9 p.m. for you. You are late and you're going to
bed. Just one final question. So what helped you heal from your situation and what you went through?
What helped me is the fact that first of all, I was very fortunate to have a mother. Many of my fellow survivors lost their entire family. So it's one thing that I don't take for granted. So having parents. So, and despite her pain, at least I have her. So, and I have a sibling too, my sister who survived with me. So, and also one thing that helped me the most is to see, the people who stopped the genocide, the RPF, encouraging me and many other fellow survivors that we, despite our pain, we should not revenge. So revenge is not going to help us really, have a good life. And having a mother who also was really somebody who told me to never have any hatred. Hatred was not going to help me really, heal from my past, my painful experiences. So having those people, listening to people who are in the country and also in the family, like my mom, and really encouraging me. I was pained. I was pained with a lot of pain within myself. But then one thing that I thought in my mind, I said, I'll never give up. Despite the pain, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to push myself and see, and live for my dad who is no longer here, for my brothers who are no longer here. I'm sure they will be happy to see me happy. Even though it's not easy, I'm going to do my best to live well for them. So, and one thing also helped me is to go to therapy. Therapy, I'm sure in our in our cultures, it's not necessarily something a lot of people do. So, and I think it, to me, really is important to really find a way to speak about your painful experiences. So for me, when I allow myself to go in my mind, of course, I wanted to block everything. But when I allow myself to really allow everything come out in my system, in my mind, so that's when I realized life, was worth living again. So, and writing in my memoir, trying to, to relieve everything, even though, being vulnerable. So it really helped me so much. And then that's when I realized, I can help others feel the same way too. And I can help my fellow survivors. Anybody else is going through, there are so many tragedies around the world. So many people go through trials and tribulations. Maybe they can learn from my experience, how I see, that I can be part of also changing our world, making sure that nobody is going to live the same thing I've lived through. So I do not wish anybody to go through what I've been through. So, and to see, to do that really in that journey, it really helped me really heal a lot. So it really helped me a lot. So I'm truly grateful. And also my faith, I'm Christian. So
likewise,
and really it's part of it's part of me too. So it really helped me a lot. So, and now that's why I feel like I'm here for a reason. I survived for a reason. So, and like what you're doing, you're helping a lot of people. So we are here for a reason. So
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So, and we need to, be part of helping our fellow humans to make sure, like, at least we leave the world a little, at least better, plant a little bit something nicer in the world. At least whoever is going to be born, at least can find something nice. So, yeah. So I think that's why I feel like my purpose to do that. So.
Yeah. So you found your purpose. That's absolutely wonderful. I really appreciate that. I'm definitely gonna go now and order your book and have a read of it, and then hopefully one day down the line we can discuss it a bit further once I've read it. And I'm gonna encourage all my listeners and viewers to also go and purchase your book and check out your story and engage with you and listen to your story. And and I really appreciate you taking your time to be with me today. I know your day's just started, so you probably got loads of things to do, but it's been an intriguing one. It's been a super eye opener for me myself.
Thank you so much.
I've learned a lot, and I really pray that everyone else that listens to it learn a lot. So thank you very much for being on Let's Do Humans podcast. It's been absolutely wonderful having you on.
Oh, it was so wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. Really means a lot. Thank you.
Definitely. We'll catch up again. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll definitely catch up.
You too. Have a good